On today's episode of the RN2writer Show, I'm cracking open my books to talk about the math behind getting to six figures as a writer. Welcome back to the RN2writer Show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Hanes, and I built a six-figure writing business in my spare time. And today I teach other nurses how to do the same thing. In fact, today I'm going to talk about the whole six figures thing so that you can get an idea of what it really takes to get there. You know, one of the most common questions or comments I get when I talk to nurses about becoming a writer is, can you really make money at that? And then I tell them, well, yes, I regularly made more than $100,000 a year at this. And they say, whoa, that's crap. No one can do that. Like, okay, maybe you did, but did you work yourself to death? How many projects did you have to write? How many hours did it take? So today, I want to demystify that for everyone because it really is, in a way, a matter of simple mathematics. Now, let me preface this by saying, I don't know anybody who's done this right out of the gate. I don't know anybody who has raced to a six-figure career in the first year of being a writer or something. And the reason for that is because the two main keys to getting to six figures as a writer are, first of all, experience. You need experience juggling multiple projects. You need experience juggling multiple clients. You need experience juggling multiple projects for multiple clients. And so until you have that, which increases your efficiency and your ability to maximize your effective hourly rate, it's difficult to get to six figures, or you have to work yourself to death, and frankly, I'm too lazy for that. So the other key to this is having anchor clients, and I'm going to talk more in a future episode about anchor clients. So be sure to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, the RN2writer Show, so that you don't miss my conversation about anchor clients, how to find them, cultivate them, and how they can propel you to the top echelons of earning as a freelance writer. But today, like I said, I wanted to talk about the relatively simple mathematics involved in this. So let's start by breaking down this goal. I'm big on income goals. So if you divide $100,000 a year by 12 months, you get $8,333 per month and change. Let's call it $8,300 a month that you need to bring in. Now, if you're just starting out, that may sound insurmountable. Like, man, I'm toiling in the land of doing $100 blog posts and you're telling me I need to do, 80 of them. How's that going to work? Well, like I said, I'm too lazy for that. In my career, I believed in getting high-value projects that I knew that I could do in a small amount of time. And that's what I suggest you do as well, but remember, this goes back to your experience level, okay? So what I'm talking about may be aspirational for some of you, but I also hope to inspire you to get there. So let's look at some of my notes from how I managed to do this 3 different times in my career, averaging $8,300 a month in billings. For those of you listening on the podcast, you'll have to hear my description of this. For those of you watching right now on the YouTube channel, what I'm holding in my hand is some old planner pads, because in my planner pad every month I wrote down in the margin what I was billing for that month so that I knew how to market myself. I knew if I was falling short of my $8,300 goal so that I could go out and try to sell an article or something to make up that gap. Anyway, I'm looking at here my notes from the first week of August in 2019 is what I'm holding up. I'm going to put up some images, again, for those of you on the YouTube channel. I've redacted the client names from this because I'm covered by NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and I don't want to violate those. So you'll have to take me at my word that what I'm telling you is correct. In this week in 2019, I billed $8,200 that month, which is pretty darn close to the $83,000 we need to get to six figures. How did I do it? Well, I had one anchor client who assigned me 10 projects a month that I could do in 10 hours. If you purchase the video on how I make $400 an hour as a writer, then you've seen me writing for this client in action. I had a second client that I was getting monthly work from. They assigned me 2 blog posts per month, which took me approximately 3 hours to do. And they paid me $2,500. I forgot to mention the first client, the 10 projects, $4,500 a month was that contract. Then I had a major academic medical center that I wrote blog posts for. They assigned me 2 of those that month. That took me 2 hours. Those were very low paying by my standards. I charged $250 per post for those. And then I picked up 2 projects for a client on Skyward, which is a marketing agency. Those projects also, I knew I could do them in about an hour a piece. So 2 hours for 2 projects, $700 for the pair. That brings us to a total, $8,200. But now what does that mean in the real world? Like, what does that look like? Well, if we total up the number of projects, I did 15 projects that month, by which I mean an individual blog post, an individual newsletter. If I was doing web pages, an individual web page, each discrete deliverable. I had 15 deliverables that month, and it took me about 17 hours to do it. And I know these are accurate stats because I did research before taping this episode, and I went back to my time tracker and literally looked up all this information so that it would be accurate. Now let's look at another example of how you can do this. Going back a little bit, I first started doing this really well in the early part of 2018. The first week of February, or the last week of January really, in 2018, I billed $8,350. Woo! That hits our target right on the head, you know? We're aiming for $83.33. I nailed it at $83.50, and here's how I did it. I had one client that I was doing 5 deliverables a month for on a monthly contract. That project took me about 7 hours a month, and it paid me $2,200. I had another client that I actually spoke about in the last. They assigned me 2 blog posts per month, and I was on a contract to do that for $2,500. I had my other anchor client that I talked about also in the last part that was assigning me about 6 articles per month that took me 6 hours, and I billed them $2,850. And then I was writing web pages for a client. This was not an anchor client. This was something that I marketed to make up the gap, like I was talking about earlier, sending LOIs. And I met this client and they had need of a couple of random web pages, so I did those. Those I billed out at $400 each. Those took me about 2 hours each to write, so 4 hours total. And boom, you add all that up. There we are, $8,350. That included 15 discrete deliverables and about 20 hours of actual writing time in the month. Not sounding too shabby now, is it? Now, let me give you the most eye-popping example of how you can do this. Last year was crazy for nurses who write because everyone and their brother wanted COVID content. I have never worked so hard in my career as all of last year trying to bring accurate, well-sourced COVID information to the public for my clients. Honestly, one of the real joys of being a nurse who writes is being able to do that. So in the month of April last year, I billed $16,150 just in April. I almost doubled my desired average to hit $100,000 a year. And here's how I did it. I had my anchor client going on 6 years that every month on contract I wrote health articles. I wrote 8 of them that month. Took me about 8 hours. Billed $3,200. I had another client that had come back to me after a couple of years, wanted their entire website rewritten. Now, granted, that's an unusual occurrence. That doesn't happen every day. But I signed on to do that. And so I wrote 17 web pages for them, which took me about 24 hours. I wrote a standalone sales page for them that took me about 3 hours. And I wrote a regular newsletter that I produced for them every month, and that took me 1 hour because I was very efficient at that by that time. I had a major academic medical center that I wrote patient blogs for. I did one of those that month, took me about 1 hour, billed $250. I took on 2 projects through Skyward that each paid $1,000, and those took me about 5 hours because they were very complex scientific article things. And then I had a client who just wanted 1 blog post a month, and I charged them $700, and that took me about 1 hour. So I realized I didn't break down the client with the web page with the website redesign. So I did 17 web pages for them, as I said, in about 24 hours, and I billed them $8,500 just for that segment alone. The one-off page that I wrote, I charged them $1,000, and the newsletter that I did every month, I charged them $500. So let's go back through these numbers. I billed $3,200 to one anchor client. I billed $8,500 for a partial website rewrite for another client, plus $1,000 to that client for a sales page, plus $500 to that client for a newsletter. I had my academic medical center that I billed $250. I had my 2 projects through Skyward for a client for $2,000, and I had my blog post for a client for $700. Tally it all up, $16,000. $150 actually. Now, how hard did I work for that? Well, for me, that was a killer month because, as I've said before, my strategy was always to make the maximum amount of money with the least amount of effort so that I could enjoy my life, right? So, what this worked out to is I wrote 31 discrete deliverables, whether a web page or a newsletter or a blog post or an article. 31 assets I wrote that month. That's a lot for me. And I put in 43 hours of writing time. Again, a lot for me. I always tried to limit myself to 24 hours a week in the office total, and that included administration and marketing and checking Facebook. But I tried to limit my writing time to just 2 or 3 hours a week if I could, because writing is a very cerebral activity that takes a lot of focus, and I found that if I wrote too much, I just got frazzled and burned out. But I went all out that month for one of my biggest months ever, so 43 hours of pure writing time. That's a lot. I decided I really didn't want to do that again after that month. But you know, you take the work when it comes to you, right? I hope this has been helpful in illustrating to you, though, how you can achieve $8,300 a month in billings to get to $100,000 a year without killing yourself. Because many months were like this month in 2018, where I billed $8,350, and I only ended up with actual writing time of about 20 hours. So totally doable, about 5 hours a week of writing time, plus administration and marketing to make up the difference, right? If you have questions for me, be sure to pop them in the comments. And otherwise, I will see you on the show next time.